and welcome to Cat Tales. Today, I have two wonderful short stories to share with you. And these are stories written by O.Henry. Now, I need to tell you right away that it's O.Henry, not O''Henry. And why he's called that? Well, I don't know. But if you find out, you let me know. He was born William Sidney Porter in Greensboro, North Carolina, a little over 100 years ago. He had a very colorful life. He lived in Texas for a while. He lived in New York for a while. He even lived in Honduras for a while. And his short stories, when he was writing, absolutely made him one of the most read American authors at the time. He is best known for the wonderful endings to his story. So listen carefully, because I guarantee when we get to the end, you'll go, "Oh, I got it." And that's an O.Henry ending. My first story I'm going to share with you is The Ransom of Mac, and here it is. Now, me and my buddy Mac, we made money in a gold mine called the Lost and Found Mine, and we made quite a bit of money working all day, 7 days a week, all through the year. So one day, Mac comes up to me and he goes, "Andy, I've been thinking that we've been working every day, and I think it's about time that we just rested and just had a good time with some of the money we've been making." I said, "Well, Mac, sounds good to me. What do you think you want to be doing? You think you want to take a trip to that there Niagara Falls?" "No," said my buddy Mac. "You know what I always wanted to do? I always wanted to go to some small town and find me a nice 2-room cabin and hire us a cook and get my Buckles History of the World and just sort of sit there with my stocking feet up on the front porch railing. What do you say to that?" "Well, sounds pretty good," I said. So off we went, and that's what we did. We found us a right nice place about 20, 30 miles out of Denver. We signed the note in the bank, and then we went around and introduced ourselves to all 350 citizens in the town. I got me a banjo, and I got me an instruction book, and Matt got him one of his Buckles History of the World, and we hired us a cook. We were having us a real good time. Now, I want to tell you, anybody who says you need a lot of money to be happy, they don't know what they're talking about. We was having the best time of our lives, just sitting out on that porch, doing nothing. Then at night, when it got too dark to see anything, we'd just talk about everything from Egypt to sciatica. So one night I'm sitting there, and Mac says to me, he says, "Andy, you know anything about women?" "Well," I says, "I sure do. I know all about them. I don't know if I can understand them, and I don't know if I can describe them to you, because they're pretty peculiar if you're asking me." "Well," said my buddy Mac, "I've been working since I was 14 years old, and I never did get near any one of them. Now that I'm getting on, I'm kind of sorry I never really knew a good woman, but I guess it's too late for me. Even so, I wish." "No, you don't," I said to him. "You'll be pretty happy that you avoided knowing anything like that." And so the days went by, and we were eating ham and eggs that were the best ham and eggs this side of the ocean. We were having a good time, and then one day I got me a telegraph. One of our mines was having a bit of trouble, and they were going to need me to go. So I packed up a bag, and off I went. Now, I was gone about 2 months, mind you. And when I got back, and I walked in, and I saw my buddy Mac standing there, well, I want to tell you, it was a sight to bring down my head. I looked at him, and I said, "I do not believe what I'm seeing. There's Mac all gussied up in a fancy black suit with a white ruffled shirt, and he had a chrysanthemum on his lapel as big as a bunch of spinach. And then he had a tall silk hat to boot and patent leather shoes. Well, I want to tell you, I just couldn't believe it. I said, Mac, what have you gone and done with yourself? And he said, well, Andy, what's happened while you was gone? They went and made me the justice of the peace. And just then, I saw this young girl go sashaying in front of the house. And Andy, and I looked at her, and he said, Andy, you see that girl there? And she stopped and she waved. Mac waved back at her. He said, I'm going to marry that girl tonight at 6 o'clock. I couldn't believe what I heard. You're going to marry that young girl? That is... I said, well, I'll be right back. I forgot something at the railroad station, and off I went after that young girl, and I caught up with her, too, on the corner. And I said, excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, miss. And she turned around, and she said, yes, may I help you? I said, that man you just waved to out there, he said that he's going to marry you tonight. Is that true? Oh, yes, that's very true. Well, now, you look here, missy. My name is not Missy. My name is Rebecca Rebosa. Thank you. You look here, Miss Rebosa. That man back there, why, he's old enough to have owed money to your daddy. You got no business being tied up with him. I'm sorry, sir, but he's the only chance I have. I have to let him marry me. Well, if that don't beat all, young girl your age, why, are you in love with him? In love with him? Why, certainly not, said Miss Rebosa. He's drier than an old lava bed. Well, then, there must be a young man in this town that you're hankering to tie up with. Oh, yes, indeed. His name is Eddie Bayliss. What about this Eddie Bayliss? I says to her. Well, Eddie works down the street at the grocery store. And someday he'd like to own the grocery store, but, well, he only makes about $35 a week. Well, I said, thinking, does this boy like you? Oh, he certainly does. Why, my mother has to water down the front porch every night to keep him from sitting there waiting for me. Well, that does it. I got an idea. If I pay you $1,000, would you marry this Eddie Bayliss at 5 o'clock? Oh, well, $1,000? You are my rich uncle. Of course I would do that. So off we went down to the grocery store, and we talked to that Eddie Bayliss, and I handed over the check, and I felt so proud of myself because I had saved my buddy Mac. No way now could he marry this girl. So I walked around town feeling pretty proud of myself, sat down on a log and thought, I saved Mac from this fate of being tied up to this young girl. So finally I wandered home, and it must have been about 5:30, and there's my buddy Mac, and he's sitting on the porch, and he's got his feet up on the railing, and he's back in his old clothes, and he's got his banjo on his lap, and he's playing Buffalo Gals. And I said to him, you don't look ready for a wedding. What happened? Pretending like I didn't already know. And he looked at me and he said, no. Funny thing happened. He said, they changed the wedding to 5 o'clock from 6 o'clock. And I said, what? He said, yes, they changed the wedding. I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, Miss Rebosa and Eddie Bayliss, I told you I was going to marry him. You see, the minister went away last month, and I was the only chance for them to get married. I told you I was a justice of the peace. But I don't want you to worry none, Andy. I got to tell you, there were a lot of women folk there, but I minded what you told me. I took your advice, and I didn't get mixed up with any one of them, because you sure know everything there is to know about women. Yeah, I sure do. Or at least I thought I did. Oh, well. Did you get the ending? Did you hear the ending? Yes, he did marry her, but he didn't marry her himself. And that is the Ransom of Mac. Now, my next story is called After 20 Years. It's a great story, and again, listen for the ending, and as you're listening to the story, ask yourself, where is this going? And this is After 20 Years. The policeman made his way up the street. It was cold, it was dark, it was a little bit rainy, but he had a little bit of a swagger to him when he walked, and he twisted his club around. It wasn't really from ego or anything of the sort. It was just from years of being on the job as a patrolman. And here and there he'd check a door, but it was late and most of the businesses were pretty much all closed up. Once in a while he'd go by a lunch counter that was still open a little bit later, or a pharmacy. And then once in a while he'd pass by someone, but for the most part the streets were pretty empty. And then across the way he saw a man standing in one of the doorways, just standing there waiting, and the officer approached him. And the man said, oh, no, officer, it's all right, I'm waiting for my buddy. And as he talked, he lit a match to light a cigar, and that's when the officer saw the man's face. And he noticed it was a pretty craggy, square face, and he had a scar down the side, and a very expensive diamond stick pin in his tie. And the officer said, well, is that so? Yep. You see, here's what it is. Me and my buddy Jimmy Wells, well, we grew up together in New York, and when I was 20 and he was about 18, I was going off to make my way in the world. You know, Jimmy Wells, you couldn't get him out of New York. No siree, he thought New York was the best place in the world, thought it was the center of the city. So the last night that we were together, we ate dinner in this restaurant. And I said, well, yeah, they tore it down about, 5 years ago. Well, anyway, officer, we decided that we would meet here in 20 years at exactly the time we parted, which was 10 o'clock at night. And so that's what I'm doing here. Oh, I see, said the policeman. Well, 20 years is an awful long time. You didn't keep in touch? Oh, well, we did for a while, but, I was hustling. You gotta really be a mover and a shaker out west to make anything of yourself. So after a while, we just sort of lost touch, and I don't know what happened to Jimmy. I hope he did okay. And he was kind of a plodder himself, but I hope he's okay. Oh, I see, said the policeman. So are you going to wait here, or are you going to leave at 10 o'clock? No, I think I'll wait a bit because if I know Jimmy, he'll be here. So I'm going to wait a little bit longer and see if he doesn't show up. We were the best of chums, and I can't wait to see him. Okay, said the policeman. Well, have a good night. And off he walked, went down the street, pretty much the way he'd come. And the man stood and he waited a little bit, and a few people went by. Time passed. It wasn't that late. It was about maybe 20 after 10. And he finally saw a man come down the street, hustling, headed right towards him. And the man called out, Bob, is that you? And the man standing there said, oh, Jimmy Wells, Jimmy, is that you? And he crossed the street and they met him and he said, good to see you, Bob. How you doing? And he looked at him and the man said, Jimmy Wells, what a nice time. And the man said, well, so how you been? I've been good. I've been real good. And Jimmy Wells said, well, I'll tell you what. I got a better place where we can talk. Let's head down the street where we can have a better conversation. And so they started off walking down the street. But they finally came to a neon sign that had been left on for some time. And all of a sudden, Bob stopped and he looked at his friend and he said, whoa, wait just a minute. You ain't Jimmy Wells at all. For one thing, you're taller. Well, yeah, but sure, Bob, but I grew a little after you left New York. No, you're not him at all. 20 years is a long time, but it's not long enough to change a Roman nose to a pug nose. You're not him at all. No, said the man, you're right. 20 years is a long time. And you know what, Bob? It's long enough to change a good man to a bad one. You're not really Jimmy's friend Bob at all. You're Silky Bob from Chicago, and you're on all the wanted posters. I'm here to arrest you. Now come along peacefully. Chicago really wants to talk to you. Oh, but wait. Before you go, I have a letter for you to read. And he handed the man the letter. And he opened it up and it said, Bob, I was at the appointed place, at the appointed time, at 10 o'clock. But when you lit the cigar, I recognized your face from the posters that I had seen in the police station. I couldn't bring it. I just couldn't make myself. I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't put you under arrest. So instead, I went around the corner and found a plainclothes man to come and arrest you. Signed, your friend, Policeman Jimmy Wells. And that is after 20 years. So the good news is, if you'd like to read more O.Henry stories, they are all out in the public domain. And if you Google them, you can read them yourself online. They are fabulous stories. I guarantee you will love reading them. And thank you very much for watching.